everybody. Welcome to the mini story for the Day of the Dead. In the mini story, I will three things. I will make a statement. For example, I arrived in Guatemala. When you hear that statement, sentence, you just say, "Oh, ah." You need to say that, show that you understand. This is not a question. So when you hear statement, say, yes, okay. For example, I write Guatemala. Okay. The second thing I will do is ask. I will do is ask a question you know the answer to. For example, when do I write? Okay. The third, I might ask a question you don't know. The question you must guess. You must guess answer. Okay. The start. Okay. Let's here we go. Okay. Here we go. I arrived in Guatemala on the Day of the Dead, November 1st. Did I arrived in the Day of the Dead? Yes. Did I arrived in the Day of the Dead? Did I arrived in the Day of the Dead? Yes. I arrived in the Day of the Dead. In the Day of the Dead on November and in the Day of the Dead. Where did I arrived? I arrived in Guatemala on the Day of the Dead, November 1st. Who arrived in Guatemala on the Day of the Dead? Oh yeah, me. IG. Okay. I arrived in Guatemala Day of the Dead. Okay. Neck. Did I arrive in Guatemala? Did I arrive in Guatemala on November 1st? No, I didn't arrive in Guatemala on November 1st. I arrived Guatemala on November 1st. What day did I arrive in Guatemala? No, November 1st. I arrived in Guatemala on November 1st. Where did I arrive on? I arrived on November 1st. November 1st. I arrived in Guatemala on November 1st. I arrived in Guatemala on the Day of the Dead, November 1st. I was curious about this holiday, so I went to cemetery to see what was happening. Was I angry? Was I angry about this holiday? No, I wasn't angry about this holiday. Was I sad about this holiday? No, I wasn't sad about this holiday. I was curious. I was curious about this holiday. Who about curious this holiday? Me, IG. I was curious about this holiday. What was curious about? What was curious about? I was curious about this holiday. Okay. The question: Which curious about? The Day of the Dead. I curious the Day of the Dead. Was I curious about the Day of the Dead, or was I curious about chemistry. Sorry, Christmas. Christmas. Okay, I was curious about the day of the dead. Of course. Okay, of course. So I went to cemetery to see what was happening. Where did I go? I went to cemetery. Did I go? Did I go to cemetery? Did I go cemetery? Did I go cemetery? Oh, did or the cemetery? Or did I go the airport? I went to cemetery. Cemetery. I went to cemetery. I went to cemetery. Okay. Who went to cemetery? Cemetery. I went to cemetery. Okay. Where did I go? I go to where did I go? I go to cemetery. When did I go to cemetery? November 1st, on the day of the dead. Okay. Where did I go to cemetery? I go to cemetery to see what was happening. Who went to cemetery? Who went to cemetery? What to see what's happening? AJ, me, AJ. Okay. Who went to cemetery? What was happening? AJ went to cemetery to see what was happening. Okay, next question. Where was the cemetery in Guatemala? Where was the cemetery? Where was the cemetery? Where was the cemetery? In Guatemala. What is the day of the dead? The day of the dead is holiday. Yeah. I felt quite interesting. What I found was quite interesting. Was it boring? No. It was boring. Was it interesting? Yes. It was interesting. How did I feel about the cemetery? How did I feel about cemetery? I felt interesting. I felt it was interesting. What was interesting? The cemetery. What was interesting? The cemetery was interesting. When was the cemetery interesting? I was interesting on the holiday on the day of the dead, November 1st. Okay, the atmosphere in the cemetery was like a party. Was the atmosphere very sad? No, the atmosphere was not sad. Party sad, and the atmosphere was happy. Was the atmosphere sad, or was the atmosphere happy? The atmosphere was happy. What was like a party? The atmosphere in the cemetery like a party. Okay, thank you for listening to me.